I think the U.S. government is unaware of many of the cultural issues that they're dealing with when they're dealing with folks who are Muslim background, who come from overseas. For example, it's very normal, and in fact, it's part of the Islamic law that when you give a loan, that it has to be witnessed by somebody. And it's not uncommon even here. When you go and sign a bank loan, you have to have a witness or somebody else is there. It's the same idea. And it is not uncommon for the federal government to mistake that for someone who's actually endorsing the action as opposed to following a custom or a rule that that particular culture is following. And we've seen this many times, and I think the case in Albany is a great example of that. But I also think that we shouldn't underestimate the government's knowledge about that region if they really wanted to know about it. And in my opinion, they are more interested in convicting or at least arresting folks who may be religious or imams or have titles of that nature or who are the leaders in their community than they are interested in really finding a crime. So I think the case in Albany is more an example of the fact that they got a guy who was an imam of the mosque and a guy who was on the board of the mosque, and they said, aha, this is a great example that we're going to make. I think that the United States government has connected religiosity with terrorism. The more religious, the more likely you're to be a terrorist, in their opinion. The more secular, the less religious, the better you are as an American. And I think that that mentality has driven many of the investigations. And I think if you look at what happened even here in New York City, the investigation by the NYPD started as just putting an informant in every mosque. And let's see what we hear. Let's take down license plates of people who are there. Let's hear what the imam is saying. Is there anything anti-American? And that's what was written up in many of the police reports of those informants here in New York. Was it anti-American rhetoric?
I guess in my mind I would think that the targeting of the imam would also disrupt the whole community, because they're such an important part of the community. They're the mentor, they're the guide, et cetera, that there would be reason to target an imam.
I think that the federal government's strategy as a terrorism case investigation has been threefold. One is to go after the religious leaders because they believe that those religious leaders are the source of radicalization of the community. So let's cut them down. Second has been, I think, to go after those who are of financial means in the community in order to prevent money from going overseas to so-called terrorist groups through charities and that sort of thing, and going after doctors and that type. And the third part is to instill a certain amount of fear in the community in order to prevent them from rallying around those who do get targeted. And you've seen that for the most part, a lot of these cases, once a person's indicted, the community runs away from them, no matter how respected that person was prior to that indictment, no matter how truthful and honorable that person has represented themselves in that community throughout their life there. Once they're indicted, the community runs away. And that is the fear factor I think the federal government has, in my opinion, intentionally instigated within the Muslim community.